few days ago, users of the streaming platform Spotify suddenly experienced this. Gone. 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 Gone, gone, and gone. Hundreds of their favorite chartbusters from their favorite blockbusters on their favorite streaming platform, gone. Why? Well, the songs belong to music label Zee Music, and Spotify has to pay the music label to stream those songs under a licensing contract. According to sources, Zee recently hiked the price to renew the contract. And Spotify did not want to pay that premium, so it had to take the songs down. In the words of Spotify India spokesperson Vasundhara Mudgil,
Spotify and Zee Music have been unable to reach a licensing agreement. Throughout these negotiations, Spotify has tried to find creative ways to strike a deal with Zee Music and will continue our good faith negotiations in hopes of finding a mutually agreeable solution soon.
Zee did not respond to queries. Now, the Zee-Spotify difference is the latest instance of long recurring conflicts between producers of music and their broadcasters or streamers. They are two of the main cogs in a wheel that makes the music industry run. These are conflicts on issues like how much the songs are really worth, how and where they should be used, and what their reach should be. This also points to some intrinsic problems of the sector. Now, unlike in the West, India's music industry is almost entirely an offshoot of its film industry. And like the film industry, it's vastly unorganized. It's unevenly spaced out between labels, distributors, artists, and streaming platforms. Rates and fees are unregulated, arbitrary, and given to random and massive hikes. Contracts are complicated. There are hundreds of licenses that one needs to get. Legal framework is fragmented and dated, and there is no one government body to oversee all of this. Most critically, it's an industry whose products you and I aren't willing to pay for anymore. We get our music digitally, and most of us enjoy it for free.
I would say India is one of the toughest markets to negotiate music deals. But it's also the place to come to because the consumer, we have the maximum number of songs, consumers, etc., etc.
The number of consumers are booming. The biggest music labels are profitable, but audio streaming platforms are bleeding. In this scenario of complex contracts and clashes, high input costs, and uncertain revenue streams, will these platforms survive? That's one among several questions that we ask in today's episode. This one features the head of a prominent music label, the former head of a music broadcaster, and a legal expert in media and IP issues. It also has inputs from various other industry executives who did not want to be recorded. It's Friday, the 31st of March, the last day of this financial year. From The Economic Times, I'm your host Anirban Chaudhary, and you're listening to The Morning Brief. Like I said, the audio streaming market in India is really growing. Redseer Consulting recently said that there are 140 million subscribers in India's audio streaming platforms. So for instance, Spotify launched in India in 2019. There was a slow start and then a sharp growth. The Swedish company has tripled its number of users in India in the last 24 months. That's what its vice president in charge of markets and subscribers, Gustav Gyllenhammar, said in a recent media interview. He didn't share absolute numbers, but Redseer says Spotify has the maximum number of streams in India right now. Spotify's rivals are Gaana.com, and then there's
Savan. ये ऐप सब बजाता है. रपा रप, धपा धप.
And also
Download the Airtel Wink Music.
And then there's the most recent entrant, Reso, of TikTok owner ByteDance, which has been growing fairly fast in the smaller cities. As per numbers from an industry lobbying body called the Indian Music Industry, or IMI, more than 86% of the industry's revenue in 2021 came from streaming. Competition in this market segment is massive, and it mostly comes from an entity which is not an audio streaming platform. What do I mean? Well, since most of our popular music is from films, we want to see our songs, not just listen to them. I mean, what's the fun of listening to Natu Natu or Pathan's title track without the wildly viral dance steps, right? So, the largest consumption of music in India happens on YouTube. And YouTube is a gorilla. It gets its highest number of subscribers in the world from India. For example, there are 333 million combined subscribers to the YouTube channels of just two music labels, T-Series and Zee Music. That's almost 2.5 times the entire universe of subscribers to all streaming platforms in India. Wow. And how do the music labels stack up? Well, T-Series is the most powerful player. The other prominent ones are Saregama, Tips, Times Music, and of course, Zee. Sony Music has a mix of Indian and international songs in its repertoire. There are big regional players like Aditya Music for Telugu songs and the massively successful Speed Records in Punjab, which is now an exclusive partner for Times Music. And then there are hundreds of smaller labels for regional and independent music. So, how do these transactions really work? Here's Vandita Malhotra Hegde, whom you heard at the beginning of this episode. Vandita is founder and managing partner at VMH and Associates. She's an absolute legal eagle when it comes to cases related to media, IP, and copyright issues.
So if you want to start your platform with a particular repertoire and a volume of music, you need to first decide what is the content you need and then put it into buckets. So you identify each label, you reach out to each label, and then you sign a license agreement with them. Usually they will put terms to you. For example, even before you start, they want a minimum guarantee amount. They will give you the past, present, and usually your future repertoire that they have. They will license that to you, typically for 1 to 2 years only. So if you're talking about big labels and you're talking about 60,000 to 1 lakh kind of songs, those deals, depending on who you are, could go anywhere from, 8 crores to, in the Indian world, to even 20, 30 crores a year. After that agreement expires, you need to go back to them for a renewal of the license. That's where the tough part is, right? Because let's say you negotiated your first year license fee at $100. You have to be prepared for a hike of 10, 20, even 100% in the next term.
All in, the payout in these contracts are huge. Globally, Spotify spends 70% of its revenues in royalties, mostly to music labels. And the contracts are god-awfully complex.
And it's not a standard contract across that industry either. So when somebody says, you can put ads after 5 songs, the other person says, no, you put ads after every 2 songs, for example. Or they say that you cannot use my music in a podcast. Somebody says, no problem. As long as you're paying me, please use it where you like on your platform. Then there are restrictions as to which other services can even give you a link to your platform. So for example, if I was supposed to put my platform, say vandita.com, which is a music platform, onto a Geo or a Netflix, I can't do that. They will ask you for more money. So that's why I call it cumbersome, because it's a lot of planning, a lot of details that go in the agreements, the clauses, everything gets negotiated. Big contracts can take up to, anything from 0 to 18 months to close. It's like you continuously add something to be able to close contracts. And, some of them are, rightly so. And some are, typically negotiated from a strength perspective and who blinks first and, things like that.
How do music labels explain this? I asked Mandar Thakur, Chief Operating Officer of Times Music. Times Music is part of BCCL that also publishes the Economic Times. Mandar told me that one needs to first understand the nature of the product that we are talking about, film music.
Original soundtrack of film songs here, many of them are like advertising jingles. There's a producer, there's a director, there's an actor, there's a script, there's a visual, there is a flow. These 4 or 5 things combine, and of course, let's not forget the distributor who perhaps wants an item song in that. These 4 or 5 things combine to create a piece of music to a brief. That's been the case for the last 100 years or more. Now, without delving too much into the system of copyright, what tends to happen is when a piece of work is created, a copyright is created. The producer technically becomes the first owner of copyright. He then sells all of the rights, including the link documents with the singers and whatever else, to a music label for valuable consideration. That consideration could be anywhere from 10, 20, 15, 30 lakhs all the way to 30 crores, 33 crores. Every year, there must be close to at least 1,500 crores or so easily going into the acquisition of movie soundtracks, creation of music, advances.
And of course, a massive chunk on marketing and promotion. All that is built into the price the music label charges the streaming platforms. But isn't this a one-time cost? Once a movie and its songs are produced, they are there forever. There's no recurring cost. Why do music labels hike charges every time the contract is renewed?
So what happens every year, you take one movie, and yes, it's for perpetuity, but it's not always for perpetuity. Royalties are paid out too. So that is one large misunderstanding. The whole worldwide system works on royalties. Because they work on royalties, nobody really charges you heavy advances upfront. Composers and lyricists also have the right to royalty for underlying works through a society called the IPRS, right? What happens when you have a continuous cycle of spend and you have a product that has grown? Every year there is new product going out, like every single year. So yeah, if there is a library of say 1,000 songs as an example, and you're embellishing that every year with 50, 60, 100, 200 songs, yeah, the quantum of your payment should go up. One. Number two is, as a label, your market share also increases and in many ways decreases. So that will define your increase, decrease. Number three, there is organic growth within the platform. A platform is not an entity. It is the consumers who are the entity. So today, if there is a platform X, that fellow has 100,000 consumers, then it is the value of the repertoire that works in conjunction with the amount of consumers who are consuming that repertoire. If that 100,000 goes to 1 million, the platform has to pay more, by which logic it doesn't pay. If that platform goes up to 10 million, yeah, they have to pay up.
This muscle power of they have to pay up pervades across music labels. Bigger the hits, bigger the power. So in one instance, an Indian music label quoted a number for 100 songs that was 3x of what a global music label had quoted for about 200,000 songs. Go figure.
This business is not about the number of songs you give. It is the amount of hits you have in your repertoire. It is the amount of catalog that has a long tail, and it is the amount of catalog that has a demand. If you go to any tiny market in India or anywhere else, and somebody is creating 1 million bhajans, are you going to take that 1 million as a big number? No, right? If 100 or 200 tracks have far more consumption value, then yeah, which part of the world are you living in, right? For a record label, it's very simple. We create art. That's the business we're in, art that should be commercially consumed. And we license that out to whoever at terms that are fair market terms. Fair market is a both-way street, right? If we value our art higher, we value our art higher. If you don't have the capacity to take it, don't take it.
But then Mandar tells me that this take it or leave it stance is a trickle down from the section of the industry the music labels themselves pay. The film producers, the singers, the composers.
Without naming people, of course, composer A++ category will say, no, this is my rate, take it or leave it. Today, prices are inflated. When RRR gets, Oscar, everybody in India suddenly decides that they will charge 3 times. Is there any logic to it? No. It's the cost at which your last film went out.
So the southern films that have been doing great pan-India business have that leverage. Agreed. But what about Bollywood? The fact that it hadn't given a hit in years before Pathaan should weaken that leverage, right? So the charges and fees should fall, no?
No. By which logic? Nowhere in the 200-year history of show business has any input cost gone down. Nowhere. That is like 200 years of Hollywood, Bollywood, and everything that bloody comes in the middle. Nowhere in the history, recorded history in 200 years, has any cost gone down.
The streamers and broadcasters, of course, counter a lot of this. For example, the music label's claims of high payments to composers and singers. Well, apart from A-listers, does every singer and composer really get paid on time? Do some of them get paid at all? No. Their detractors say that music labels are merely flexing their muscle, and that's
completely obnoxious. And I use the word obnoxious very consciously.
That's Prashant Pandey, former CEO of the FM channel Radio Mirchi and a veteran in the music industry.
So a label, and I won't name the label over here, will come and say to a streaming platform saying, I will charge you 40 crore rupees minimum guarantee this year. So the guy will say, but hey, I can't justify 40 crores. My revenues are not even going to be 40 crores. How do I pay you alone 40 crores? Because there are so many other costs to be incurred. So the guy will say, too bad, because you people play only music. You're totally dependent on music. Without music, your platform is nothing. So I should get 40 crores. Then I will charge you at the rate of 10 paise per stream. And if that 10 paise per stream comes to more than 40 crores, then you pay me more than 40 crores. And then here's the worst thing. They will give you a 1-year license. So now imagine if you begin the year 40 crores in the deep, and then you say that, how do I start recovering 40 crores? So then you work through the year, you do all your marketing campaigns, you spend hundreds of crores of rupees, you incur like hundreds of crores of losses, and you come somewhere at the end of the year and you're somewhere, saying that, okay, maybe 40 crores is justified, or maybe 30 crores is justified. And then this label comes and says, hey, I'm going to charge you 60 crores next year.
In fact, radio channels were the first corporate entities to really clash with music platforms.
It started way back in 1999 and then culminated into 2002 when it got, a little deeper. When the radio regime came in, privatization of radio came in. And that's when music was needed, right? Because India did not have news. Private FM was not allowed to broadcast news. So the only thing they were allowed to do was music. They were allowed to play music. Yeah, so privatization of radio was only, the only content that they could use was music, right? At one point, the government fees that you had to pay was lesser than the fees you pay to music labels. So the use of spectrum, which the government licensed, was cheaper than the usage of music, right?
Oh, wow.
So that's when this suddenly you had to step back and see whether this was feasible. The moment you started this reasonableness of the royalty, one realized that the royalty costs were sometimes 100 and 200%, which meant that you would shut down. That's when the battle started between the radio industry and the music industry as to what could be the right rate of royalty for sustainability, for business, for just existing for radio.
There were massive legal battles. Laws were changed. Government bodies were formed and dismantled. But the contracts are still unwieldy and complex. And now, streaming platforms are at their receiving end. Internationally, these transactions are much easier to negotiate, says Vandita.
Internationally, the ease of business is there. It is much easier to negotiate contracts. India is one of the toughest markets to negotiate music licensing deals. I won't say that they're a cakewalk internationally. Having said that, they're definitely more structured and streamlined. The reason in India has become so cumbersome is that our law changed in 2012, added a lot of complications. While it was supposed to make business easier, I think some of the way the law turned out has created a lot of issues. So I think definitely easier internationally. The music societies are very structured, doing extremely well. Make it much easier to go to them and get your licenses as well. So I think from a perspective of the Indian market versus the rest of the world, I would say India is one of the toughest markets to negotiate music deals. But it's also the place to come to because the consumer, we have the maximum number of songs, consumers, etc., etc. So definitely, exciting place to be, but you need to get that balance at some point in India.
And the biggest problem in India is, of course, the fact that we aren't willing to pay for the music we consume. Of the 140 million audio streaming platform subscribers in this country, only 10 million pay up. Globally, of Spotify's total user base, 45% are paid subscribers. that percentage is much lower in India. Which brings us to the overall question of the survivability of such a model. So naturally, streaming platforms in India are making losses.
If you were to just go through ROC records, and you will find the losses incurred by all these streaming platforms. I mean, I know of the top 3 streaming platforms have each incurred somewhere around 200 to 250 crore rupees of losses every year. I mean, that's remarkable. Huge losses. I mean, accumulated losses probably running into 700, 800 crore, 1,000 crores even, right? Now, let's look at some other data. Just pick up the results of T-Series from ROC, right? They are doing more than 50% EBITDA margin.
The net profits of Tips and Saregama, 2 listed entities, have grown almost every year since 2018. Streaming platforms are struggling to change the way they do business. Spotify is trying hard to push for more subscriptions in India. Gaana, the country's oldest music streaming platform, recently changed its model to an entirely subscription-based one. Will such drastic examples of remodeling work? Prashant says no.
In India, there is no subscription business. The whole, the whole Netflix story, right? That they barely got 5 million subscribers. The whole Hotstar has got some 50 million subscribers. So there is no subscription business as far as music is concerned, because there is 60, 70, 80% pirated music. So nobody is going to pay subscription fees to subscribe to a music service. It's available for free in most places. So that's a problem that is there. So all of them offer subscription products, by the way, but none of them manages to get more than 2 or 3 million subscribers. I believe Spotify has got about 2 or 3 million subscribers, or maybe 4 million subscribers, but that's not enough to do anything at all. So that's the impact that happens when you remove the free tier.
Indians. We love our films and we love our film music. The billions of melodies composed, sung, and produced over decades are now part of our daily lives, events, philosophy, literature, spirituality, religion, relationships, and death. And we experience our music like no one else in the world. The way we consume music has, however, evolved. Our growing exposure to the internet has now made sure that our playlist includes Bollywood, current and retro, regional music, independent artists, and global sounds. And there are segments of the population that listen to and watch various combinations of these segments. And gone are the days when we used to save money to buy cassettes and CDs for our artist or film of choice. We are now exposed to so much for free that music has never degraded in value as it has now. A song's shelf life is just a few weeks, slightly more if it's used in social media reels. The churn-out is massive, even as creative juices are sapping. All this makes India an extremely fascinating but an ultra-dynamic and ruthless market, often with little legal recourse than criminal court cases. The only entities that have survived the industry through the decades are music labels, through thick and thin, by hook or crook, through fights and friendships. And the latest entrants, the streaming platforms, Spotify and Saavn and Gaana and Wynk, well, they have to work with them. They have to convince them, and they have to stand up to them on occasion. We as consumers need to change too. We need to understand how we are consuming music is only a few notches better than piracy. When the end consumer doesn't pay for a product, someone, somewhere is getting exploited. For music streaming platforms to survive, a lot needs to change. There needs to be a complete overhaul of sensibilities, of transactions, and of course, of laws. Whether that'll happen and when is an episode for another day. That's it for today. This is Anirban Chaudhary from The Economic Times, and you are listening to this episode only on The Morning Brief. This episode was produced by Sumit Pandey, sound engineer Indranil Bhattacharjee, executive producers Anupriya Nair, Arijit Barman, and myself. We hope you liked this episode. Do share it on your social media networks. Do remember to tune in to a new episode of The Morning Brief every Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday to a listening platform of your choice. And after this episode, spare a thought or maybe a dime for the platform that is bringing that content to you. Have a great weekend ahead. All clips used in this episode belong to their respective owners. Credits are mentioned in the description.